We can learn all kinds of ethical philosophies, but the thing is, journalists need to apply these ethics, and we apply them every day. So let's take a look at whether it's ever okay to do some of these things. So, what do you guys think? Is it ever okay to use material from your newspaper's library and put it in your story like it's your own? Is it ever okay to use material from the wire service and use it like your own? Can you use the work of a fellow reporter without giving them credit? Can you use material from other publications? Can you use news releases that are unedited and put them into your stories like they're your own? And can you use old stories or a column a second time? We're going to take a look at all these in class and see what you guys think about them. Now, one of the most grievous errors that journalists can make and should never make, but seem to make more and more in some fairly prominent situations, is simply making it up. We don't fabricate things, or we're not supposed to. We're supposed to get our information from sources. Those sources are supposed to be trustworthy. They're supposed to have validity behind them. They're supposed to provide information from some position of strength. But we have a variety of examples of people who have just blatantly lied to the public, and they, every time there's one of them and one of them gets caught, it's just one more chip against journalists, to the point that people aren't really sure whether or not they can trust us, and that undermines all of our credibility. So the examples that I have here are a gentleman by the name of Mike Daisey. I will show you a story about him in class, but basically he did reporting on Apple's computers being developed at a company in China, went and did what he said was first-person reporting, ran on This American Life. It turned out that much of it had been manufactured. Janet Cook, quite famous for winning the Pulitzer Prize for a story called Jimmy's World about an 8-year-old heroin addict on the streets of Washington, D.C. One small problem: Jimmy didn't exist. Jason Blair is one of the most famous fabricators of all time, worked for the New York Times, and spent years rising to the top of his profession by interviewing people that didn't exist and writing stories with sources that he never had. Rick Bragg actually is a multiple award-winning author. He's a Pulitzer Prize-winning writer, incredible writer, just amazingly gifted. But his crime was actually using sources out in the field, having interns or assistants get information for his stories and not giving them proper attribution. And he ended up leaving the New York Times under a cloud of controversy. And then most recently we've had Jonah Lehrer, who admitted to not only plagiarizing others, most notably Bob Dylan. Actually, he didn't plagiarize him. He made things up. He made up quotes from Bob Dylan. And he actually plagiarized himself. So he took information from other stories related to other sources and put them in subsequent stories. So, we have to figure out, is there ever a time when lying is justified? Can you withhold information from people that you're interviewing and not tell them about yourself? If you sidle up to someone in a bar and you start talking to them about an issue that you're covering, do you have to let them know that you're a reporter? What about, schmoozing people and telling them that you agree with their position, or that, you admire them or respect them or in some way flatter them into giving you information? What about if you misrepresent what the article's about? If you tell someone you're writing a story, for example, let's say that we're covering a school levy related to charter schools, like has happened in Columbus, and you do a story that say, you're absolutely in favor of these charter schools, you want this story to show all the wonderful ways that charter schools can benefit the community, then you turn around and write the complete opposite story. Is that okay once you've gotten those quotes? What about using a hidden camera? We've got that on ABC now. They're running all kinds of specials where they do these hidden camera things with people. Is that okay? Now, there are lies of omission and there are lies of commission. So an omission would be failing to identify yourself as a reporter. It would be taking information off of Twitter or Facebook or any chat room or any type of social media without letting people know. And the question is, what is the ethical ramification of that? And then what about an act of commission? So lying about who you are, going undercover and doing reporting. I will let you guys know in class about an undercover reporting job that I did that ended up resulting in a pretty interesting story. But, was it the most ethical decision I ever made? I'm not sure about that. And we have to remember that the appearance of impropriety is impropriety. If that's how people perceive it, then it is. So some of those things that fit into that criteria are getting gifts from sources before, during, or after a story. We don't accept gifts from anybody. We don't let them buy us lunch or even buy us coffee. We have to make sure that there's no appearance that we're trading coverage for some commodity. So, if you are doing a story on a guy who sells freeze-dried food, I actually found this story recently at the State Fair. A pretty interesting idea that it's freeze-dried food that actually most people would eat. It didn't taste too badly, but it could be used for the zombie apocalypse if you were doing a story like that. And if he gave me cans of the food in exchange for me doing the story on him, that would be patently unethical. Now, some things that may appear to be unethical, but they're really not, are things like junkets. So, entertainment firms will pay for reporters to come and experience a new amusement park, or see a movie, or have some sort of experience. I once went to LA and was part of a junket for a wine company that wanted to show how their kosher wines were as good as any other wine, and they put us up in a very fancy hotel. We went down there, we had dinner, we wrote about their wines. Ethical, a lot of places do it, a lot of reporters do it, but we have to talk about what the ethics are of that. And then, getting food in an event. So suppose I cover a lot of wine events, I get free wine. Is that okay?